over the next couple of weeks, we are going to be going through exercises in which I'm going to ask you to talk about your thinking. And you're not just doing that for your teacher, and you're not just doing it for evaluation. You're doing it to further enhance your learning, because isn't that the whole point of school? All of these exercises are what we're focusing on. It's something called metacognition. Metacognition is the awareness and understanding of your own thought processes. And sometimes what's a huge gray area for students is they don't understand the thought that goes into the finished product, because they're not being asked to work through it, they're just being asked to accomplish it. So some students don't know how to get from point A to point B because it's a gray area in between. So that's what we're going to try and fix. That's what we're going to try and work on and enhance through conversation, through peer editing, through peer conversation, and then eventually to evaluation to see where all of those ideas come from. What does metacognition look like? For example, I have kids. It's very clear that I have kids because I talk about them all the time. One of the goals as a parent for me is that I want my kids to be able to be thinking and individuals who are able to accomplish things on their own. That I'm their teacher, I'm there to guide them, but eventually I want them to know how to do those things on their own. So take for example, today, I had to get them out the door to the dentist. And anybody who knows people with kids, this is not a small feat to accomplish sometimes in a hurried morning, because I've still got to get to work as well. See, here's the thing, is that most mornings, because it's faster and quicker, I'll just get up, and in my head, I know what time we need to start getting ready. I know what time I need to ask them to get their shoes on, and I know what time we need to be out the door so that we can get to the dentist on time for 9 a.m. But what the problem is that my kids don't know that thinking. I'm not asking them to look at a clock. I'm not asking them to think about how much time it's going to take them to put on their shoes before we have to drive 3 minutes to go to the dentist. And the problem with that is that later on, they may not be able to learn how to manage their time or to think of all the factors that may go into managing your time. So what my job is as a parent is that I need to talk them through it. I need to let them know what time we're leaving. I need to let them know what time it is. And then they need to manage how much time it's going to take them to get out the door, what they need. Do they need a lunch? Do we need to pack it? And that's actually the process for learning how to do basic functions. And we're going to do that within essays. So where's this all going? I'm going to talk to you about how I wrote the essay that I wrote on the weekend. And in that, I'm going to elaborate on my thinking. So you have the essay in front of you, and I want you to be thinking about my thinking as you're hearing me talk about it. Any questions that you have, you're free to ask during. I can always pause this video, and that you can ask me parts of the process, or if you have any questions about if it makes sense or not. So here was the first part. So talking through my thinking, I asked you as a class to come up with examples where death is demonstrated within. And these are coming from your exit cards. What I did is I just on Friday afternoon put them into an organizer so that when I went home, I would have them with me. So these were the ones that I thought, okay, I can now see them from Act 1 to Act 5, because that was how I asked you. And I organized it that way, and I thought, here's how I'm going to organize it. I could take it in finding characteristics that were common between them and organizing them into 2 or 3 different points based on what they have in common. But I actually thought there was a progression here. And that's what I started to note when I read through the examples to try and think about, what is my thesis? What is it that I'm trying to prove? It's obvious that death is here. However, how am I going to organize it? And I saw there was a progression starting from seeing his dead father to now he's contemplating suicide to in the bottom, he's looking at the idea of legacy. So his ideas of death and the afterlife, or what death means, or even what life means by the end, has evolved and changed based on the experiences. And especially by Act 5, how many people are dead. That he has seen all those deaths and been a part of those deaths in some way, shape, or form, and looking at what that means for him. Especially, I was looking just at Act 4 here, where he also sees his foil, and has some contemplation about, and leads him into this idea of legacy, starting from here. So there's a real shift from I'm going to kill myself to what does my life mean, to please, Horatio, tell them about my life. So I started to see that. So that's what I went into the essay with, is that I started to see the organization. If I wanted to, I could organize it into categories, and I would probably pick and pull examples from each of them and figure out what my points were. What's the thing that connects all of them? And then therefore, what is my thesis that comes from that? So I started writing the essay, and it was not easy, and it took me probably longer to do the introduction than it did, and I'm still not really happy with it. But here's the key idea. This wasn't meant to be a perfect product. It was meant to be a first draft that I wanted you to critique. So what I would like you to do is think about my thinking as we go through it. So in the very beginning, I actually had a number of different concepts. This was not my thesis. So really, ultimately, I've got my thesis here, and I've got some other concepts up here. And I wanted to do as the play progresses, but I started adding in things like death and decay, not just death. And I added in a number of different concepts that I ended up taking out because it was too all over the place. And so I realized after I walked away from my introduction and I started typing up my points. And that's when I started realizing that I definitely wanted to go through a progression, and what was it that I saw. So I came back to my thesis, I came back to my introduction a couple of times as I outlined each act and what needed to be included and what wasn't. And then